Yeah. Well, I am just thrilled for us to have with us today Bill Renault. Bill and I go way back to the late 90s. And for those of you who don't know, Mr. Renault sold real estate in Canada, I believe mid 400 transactions in your peak years. I remember a year with 412. I don't know if you went higher than that, but you probably did. Bill is a success story on a lot of levels. First of all, that he was successful in selling and transitioning his business to a partner. Secondly, one of the most profitable people I've ever known in this industry. Bill, I remember some years where you were keeping your expenses, I want to say in the area of like 27, 28% of your gross, which is just unheard of in this business. And you have continued on now with 2 decades of coaching where you're teaching other people how to be highly profitable. And so let me just start by saying thank you so much for agreeing to do this call today. And I can't wait for all the people who will tap into it and listen to it later on to get the real tea from Bill Renault on profitability.
It's always a pleasure. It's sort of an honor to be here, and it's fun to be here. And I mean that in that I go back to those memories, and it's hilarious that you say the 90s. You're correct. In the 90s, when I started in this business, I got my license in 1992, and I was lucky enough to, because I didn't know any better, by 1995, I was the top realtor in our market, and I stayed at that position for 18 years, and then I brought in a partner and semi-retired, and came back to work in coaching and helping other people do what is fun. But I learned most of this from Star Power, and this is not a commercial. I'm just going to say it up front. I was lucky enough to be part of a cadre called the graduate course with Alan Dahm, Greg Newman, Phyllis Boborski. There might have been somebody else. I don't think so.
Ron Garber a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, and myself. And I will do a shout out right now to Alan Dahm, because Alan's the one who taught me early on in listing university, I think, how to read a financial statement. And Alan spent tons of time with me, educating me on being an entrepreneur, being a business person versus being a realtor. And I want to start that off first, because first of all, I want people on the call to understand this, is that are you an entrepreneur or are you a worker? And I say there's a difference in the headspace. Being a worker, you can be a realtor and be a worker. That means you're generating income. You're paid for the tasks that you do. An entrepreneur runs a business, and the purpose of a business is to generate a profit.
You're reminding me of the E-Myth, Bill, Michael Gerber's E-Myth book.
Thank you very much. Right. And they're different. And I honestly was a worker. I started off as a worker. I was generating revenue, and I was generating so much revenue and so much business that I needed help. And I think that's why most people start bringing in other realtors or team members, is to leverage themselves and to try and generate more business. However, they forgot they're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And they build it like a worker, which means that they're just trying to generate revenue, and everybody's trying to generate revenue. And that's important, but it's not everything. So I want you to get into the headspace. What's the purpose of a business? The purpose of a business is to generate an income and provide by providing a service or a product. And so that's the purpose. It's got to have a profit. It will have expenses, it will have profit. And when you start thinking of it as a business, now it changes your headspace to go from a worker bee to an entrepreneur. And that's the big key thing. If there's anything you take away from this call today, I would encourage it to be that. Change your headspace to being an entrepreneur. What is my purpose here? My purpose here is to build either maybe a legacy. I don't know. I was lucky enough. I sold, half my business for 7 figures. I generated good revenue, and we'll talk about that. And Amy, thank you for your introduction. my best year ever was about 351 transactions.
Oh,
Um,
I had 412 stuck in my head.
I know you did. And I love that because my goal was 365. I wanted to do one every day. And I was
Ah,
absolutely devastated we didn't get there. But I'll tell you, at 350 transactions, that was pretty good because we had gone from the year before of 220. So it was an increase of 100 and some odd transactions. And we were a team, the sweet spot. One of the reasons I coach, one of the reasons I do this and sharing the call today is I don't want people making the same mistakes as I made. And I made a lot of mistakes, a lot.
mhm.
I'll never forget it driving down the freeway of all things on tax day, which is April 30th in Canada, not April 15th, and calling my accountant and saying, okay, she sent me a message saying that she had the number for the tax remittance. And I called her and she told me the number. And I said, oh, wow, that's not bad. That's better than I thought. She said, well, Bill, there's two ways of looking at this. She said, you generated an extra $750,000, generated an extra $600,000 in revenue last year over the year before. However, your expenses were increased by 750,000.
Ah,
So your profit was down 150,000. So your tax bill is down a little bit too.
oh. Well, there's your silver lining, I guess.
Yeah, so I almost went off the road and realized that was the point that I had to get much more fiscally responsible with financial statements. And in fact, I paid my accountant a 10% above what they quoted me for if I got my financial statements by the 10th of the following of the month. This was an Alan Dom, recommendation. And Alan said, the more that you're aware of your numbers and the more that you carry your numbers with you, the more aware you'll become and the more profitable you will be. And so immediately within 3 years of that escapade, I was much more profitable. And our profits went to 7 figures. And that was the important thing. And that's why I'm on this call today. It's how to get there. It's doable. There's lots of people doing it. You have to remember in 1996, 1997, or 1998, when I was doing this, average price for our homes were under $300,000. Now those same homes in that same market will be over $1 million. So, we're now talking in much higher dollar volumes than at that time. So first off, are you an entrepreneur or are you a worker? And then most people, the income, people look at the concept that if I bring people into work for me and they're generating money, that's a bonus. That's money I didn't have to do anything for. So they're bringing me money. So it's okay for me to pay them 70, 80, 90%, 60%, whatever. That's simply not true. That's a flawed concept. That's a income-based concept, not a business-based concept. So you have to look back and say there is no rule of thumb. I'm not going to give you a formula today because there are thousands of formulas, and over the years, I've coached maybe 100 people, and I will tell you that they all have similar things, and they pay percentages, etc. But no two are exactly alike.
Correct.
There are tons of formulas that you can develop, and the formula you develop, as long as it works for you and your business and your life goals. What's the purpose of the business purpose, the entrepreneurial purpose? Mine was to build wealth and to build a legacy that I could retire. Simple. I didn't have any intention. Amy knows me. I stopped working in my 50s full time. I stopped selling real estate in my 50s, and yet I'm still in the real estate business in my 6 months from now. I'll be 70. I can't believe it. But that is my goal, is to generate and work. I work 2.5 days a week at the most, and I have done that for 15, 16 years. So you can build a business. What's the purpose? Is it to fund the life you want to live? You need to have clarity. What is the life you want to live? Number 2, then you need to have discipline to carry that out. Simple. Okay, so let's talk about numbers. All right. If you are a team leader, you better be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you will be working for your team. I quite often said at some point, if I ever came back in reincarnation, I'd join a team. I would make a lot more money. I was a great salesperson, but I spent more of my time managing people than I did selling real estate. And that was okay, because I was good at leveraging people as well. That's why I became a coach. I didn't realize that. I thought I was a good salesperson, but in reality, I was good at building systems and processes and managing the money and managing the people and putting the right people on the right bus in the right seat. And there's an old blog, if you Google it or go to my website or go to Star Power's website, it might be there, I don't even know. There's an old blog that I wrote that you have to probably search for, but it was called Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you remember that, Amy. I think I published it for Star Power at one point.
Yep.
And I honestly believe that my team made me successful. I hired smarter, brighter, more educated people than myself. I have a grade 9 education. I'm not stupid, but I'm street smart, not book smart. And I hired smarter, brighter people than me, and they dragged me along on this journey of real estate. And I got good advice along the way. I found Star Power. I found real estate conferences. I found great mentors, and Amy, Howard, Alan Dom, Greg Newman, all of these people, and I listened to them. And then I just did what they did. That's it. So one of the things is, don't be you. And I mean that is develop your model for you, your market. I hear too many people say, oh, in my market, everybody pays 50% or 60% or 70%. Who cares? Who cares? The goal is for you to build a model where people have to have, it has to be a win-win-win situation. And what I mean by that, it has to be a win for you personally, for your life goals. It has to be a win for the person working with you or for you. So they have to win, the agent or the admin team or whatever else. It has to be a win for them. And it has to be a win for the business. It can't be,
Amen.
it can't be only two. And 90% of the time, it's only two. Either a win for the agent, or it's a win for the, oh, I got time off, so I'll let them do it. That's not a win for the business. That's a win for you. It's got to be all three. So you got to make sure it's a win-win-win. And then it's important that when you do it personally for you, you have clarity. Back to that comment, clarity again, of what it is that you're trying to achieve. For me, I wanted a quality of life. I was lucky enough after, I don't know, the first 3 or 4 years, I think I worked 7 days a week, building the business, getting it going. And then most of you know, but by 1999, so that was 7 years in the business, I was working basically a 5-day work week at the most, if that, 4.5, 5 days. And I had days off, and that was leverage. That's why that was an important goal. What's your goal? So you need to know what your goal is. And then also why do people work for somebody else? Well, because it has to be, it's going to sound silly, we had a ball. It was fun. It was tons of fun. We were having a ball. We were making money. We were having fun, and we were helping people. So that was our inside mission statement: to have fun, make money, help people. And again, we had to check those off. If we weren't doing it, we didn't follow that process. So the team members, it had to also be a win for them. So I can honestly say to you, it's really amazing. I'm going to be speaking in Ottawa, which is Ottawa, Canada, is where my market was. And I'm going to be speaking next year in March on my 30th anniversary of real estate. Amazing. And at my 70th, the week before my 70th birthday, and I'll be in Ottawa. And 11 of those people from my team over the years are still in the top 1% of realtors in Ottawa.
That's incredible.
It's unbelievable. And 2 years ago when I was in Ottawa, or 3 years ago when I was in Ottawa last, we had a wonderful get together. They knew I was coming to town, and they hosted a cocktail. It was great. But the reason I'm sharing that is if you make it a win for these people, then they're going to be part of your business. Sandra, you're an example of this. You've got some people who've been with you 20 plus years, right? 20 plus years. And that's because it's a win for them. It has to be. So you also have to give them the tools. So my team members recruited most of the best team members to our team. How did they do that? Well, I gave them the scripts and dialogues. And I mean, because I realized that we had a problem. I realized that they had to know every time they go out on an appointment or whatever, other realtors say, why do you work for Bill? You're really good. You could do this on your own. You could keep 100%. And they didn't know what to say. They didn't know what the answer was. So we had to have an open conversation. And the open conversation was the people on our team generated almost double the income with no expense than the average realtor in our city. So once we had that dialogue and the facts were proven to them in writing, then they became our best recruiters. And I would get agents call me all the time to come work for our team, but I only hired 1 in 10. I played hard to get. We only wanted the best working for us. And we wanted people, most of our team members, our average life on the team was 5 years plus. Now that doesn't sound like a lifetime, but that's huge on most teams. The turnover of agents is very high. So, and admin, we had people, John Donald was with me 22 years. I was gone. He's still with the team. He's no longer with the team. He passed away 2 years ago, but I say that because they will last long term, but they need to know what to say and what to do. And it has to be a win for them. So they made above average incomes. We set it up so that they also worked, in most cases, a 5 or 6 day week at the most. We teamed them so they had partners, so they traded off days. We built systems and dialogues and processes, so that was a balanced life. So it became a win-win-win situation. Win for the business, sound like a broken record, a win for the agent or team member, and a win for me and the business. And I say me because I got to be, by the end, and Amy knows this, the last 3 years that I was still the CEO of the team, I spent 7 months in Florida. 5 months in Florida, 7 months in Ottawa. Sorry, I had that backwards. I apologize. 5 months in Florida and 7 months in Ottawa. So you can build anything the way you want it. You have to have the clarity. Okay. So looking at my notes here, I want to make I'm clear there. And I'm going to go back to, I will be honest that at moments it wasn't fun. Did we have problems? Yes. Did we have revolt? Yes. Did we have some people that needed to leave the team? Yes. And those are, the more I learned that, the more open dialogue. I will never forget it. It was first sales meeting in January. I had been gone all of November and December. I was away. And I came back in January and came to the first sales meeting, and it was off. And I'm sharing this story because I want you to realize that building a team and being an entrepreneur is risky business. And something was wrong, and I could sense the energy was wrong. And I wasn't sure what was going on. I had been away for 2 months, which is a problem. That's why I had a partner. Didn't keep that. You got to keep the energy involved in your team. And the ringleader, as I call it, said, well, while you've been gone, we've been talking. And another agent in our office, as it turns out, which means I renegotiate with my broker after that, has approached our team, all of us, and offered us a much higher split than we're making here. And if you don't change our split to the same, we're all leaving. And I went, oh, okay. And this is where you have to have some clarity on who you are and your integrity. So I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry to hear that. And I stood up and I walked out of the room. Went back to my office and just panicked. Called my broker, who was a brilliant mentor, and she said, don't worry, we'll have agents in the company who'd love to get you. You have 50 listings. We have agents in the company who'd love to do open houses. We'll figure it out. Just remind them that they can't trade in real estate because they don't have a license anymore. They just resigned. So I called my admin and said, could you just go to the boardroom and tell them that just not to collect all their phones because they were owned by the company, and just tell them they cannot be in touch with any clients until they find a new brokerage. So 10 minutes go by. One of my long-term, John Donald, I love that man, came and knocked on me and said, are you coming back? I said, oh, I thought the meeting was over. I thought you guys all quit. And he said, well, no, we said if you didn't meet Matt, I said, well, we can't match a 20% increase in splits. That's not how our model works. That's not profitable. That's not sustainable. And you guys aren't going to make more business. If you look at that particular person, they did 62 transactions last year. There's 6 of you. How are you going to do 62 transactions? We did 300 transactions. How are you going to generate revenue based on that? 100% of 0 is 0. So he walked off, came back 5 minutes later and said, well, we've talked. Would you come talk to us? Oh, okay. So I went back and talked to them. And as it turns out, by the end of that day, 3 people did leave and 3 people stayed. The 3 people who stayed spent another 10 years with the team. The 3 people who left, 2 were out of the business within 6 months. Interesting. So you have to have clarity and you have to have power in what your business model is. And that's what I'm going to go back to. You need to be an entrepreneur. What is your business model? Is it profitable? Is it sustainable? And what is the benefit to the team members? Okay, and they have to have fun. And so I learned that I couldn't be gone for 2 months with no interaction. So I developed, even though I was gone, I would quite often be in touch on a daily basis. I would be in touch in different ways with different people involved in what was going on. We didn't have Zoom in those days, so we would find ways to do conference calls, etc. You have to have team leaders have responsibilities. And my responsibility as a team leader is to ensure that those team members made above average income. I could then walk the talk. They had to make at least twice what the average realtor was in the city. Otherwise, our model wasn't beneficial to them. And that's the key point, guys. It's a responsibility to be a leader. But being a leader is being an entrepreneur. Is this making sense so far? Anybody?
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm doing all the talking. Oh,
Well, that was kind of what we were hoping for. Sandra agrees. You do the talking, Mr. Expert.
And so then you start talking about how to share your culture. So what is your culture? So we had all sorts of things. We wanted to make it more fun. So we had a cowbell in the office, for example, and the cowbell was rung when you did a deal. Well, you'd be on the phone talking to a client and they could hear this. They go, what the heck is that? It's, oh, one of our team members just sold another home. And that would happen like 2 or 3 times in a phone conversation. My God, people go like, oh my God, you're selling homes left, right, and center. Yeah, we are. It was fun. They got to ring the bell. It's a silly thing. It's okay to start over if you're not profitable. I just talked about that. People left, people came. We had to restructure. But when people left or came, we made them be part of the culture. And they became part of the culture. And it's interesting. I'm going to call somebody out. He'll probably listen to this at some point. John King, who was my very first team member. Amy will probably remember him. John's gone on to open his own brokerage and has over 200 realtors now working for him and still does personal revenue in 7+ figures himself. And they've built they have 3 or 4 offices in Ottawa, and they've built a great business. But when I visited John, 10 years on his own, his office systems and his office files were still set up in the same format. If you have good systems, if you have good processes, Sandra, you're an example of this. If you have good systems, good processes, they will be followed by those team members. And almost all of those team members who are still in the business will tell me they still follow the same protocol. Prospect, keep in touch, relationship-based, have fun, make money, help people. Got to be all 3. If you're not helping people, they're not going to come back to you. So they have to look after the client's interests first. If you're not having fun, it's going to get boring and you're going to get out or self-destruct or get distracted. And if you're not making money, and that's what happens with a lot of realtors, and you see it, they're doing it forever. They can't retire, or it's their whole identity. They haven't got their clarity of what they want this business to provide for them. It is who they are. And that's okay. That's fine. But you have to know what yours is. You have to know what yours is. I hated winter, and I lived in Canada. Oh my God. Doesn't work. I'm talking to you today from Miami, Florida. I live here full time. So it's about being at choice. What is your choice? So get out of your own ego, start over if you have to, restructure. There are some documents that I've asked to be shared. I'm sorry, Tammy, your name went out of my head for 30 seconds. The joys of being 70, a senior moment. But we'll share
You are a
those.
young 70, first of all.
I think I'm 40,
I'm
by the way.
55 and I have those moments, Bill. So let's just say we can
I
all have
still
senior
think I'm
moments.
40, by the way, just to be clear. I know I'm 70, but I think I'm 40. But
I have a question for you, but I may be
Sure.
jumping the gun, so just tell me if I need to wait.
Nope.
I'm curious, in all of the businesses, real estate businesses you've evaluated, do you see commonalities in areas of overspending?
Yes.
Okay. If you're going to address it, I didn't want
No.
to jump.
Well, I
Okay.
will, because Penny, can you pull up the one the average percentage guidelines? I just want to share that on the screen. So these are industry standards, and this is where people screw up. They spend too much money in the wrong areas. I believe in a model called 30-30-40. 30% cost of sales. That means 30% of the income generated by team members should be by other people other than yourself. Typically, that's 30%. So if you have team leaders, me and a business partner, we generated still 60 to 70% of the business. 30% were generated by the agents on the team. And then 30% were expenses. And 40% should be profit. And that's okay. I would be upfront with team members. Hey, if I'm not making a profit out of this, I ain't going to do it. And you're not going to have a place to come work. And you're not going to be able to generate your income, which is double the average realtor. So you want me to be profitable, right? Yeah, they did. So these are industry averages. Cost of sales, you'll see 30%. Gross profit, expenses, 29 to 30%, depending on where you're at. So the first one would be I call it a solo entrepreneur. That is somebody who's probably working on their own. They're starting off maybe 300 income. And then you'll see 500, 800, a million, two. That's where it gets more profitable. And then where you're starting to break down in expenses. So you should be running on average 10 to 12% in staffing other than sales agents. Although I do have some of my most successful teams today. Again, I said there's no perfect one. I have two teams that are doing phenomenally well, and they have salaried salespeople. So that is also an option. It's a different concept, but it can be done, especially works better in the high end, where you do multiple of working with both sellers and buyers. That works best in there, that one. But typically you want to spend 12% in admin support or salaries. Lead generation should be about 10%. So that's the biggest error. Most people are spending, I get people who are spending 20%. And I'll be honest, remember the first year I said to you, we did more transactions and I made less money. We spent way too much money in marketing. We generated a lot more business, but it cost me more money than I made. That's not sustainable. It's okay to
Bill,
build.
do you find that a lot of people just don't evaluate their marketing on an ROI basis?
Correct. Everything should have a return on investment of 5 times the expense. I know some people writing that down. I'm thrilled. Yep. That's great. Is 5 times the expense is what I always used to say. And I also would look, if I'm going to geographically farm, that market share had to have a turnover ratio that generated enough revenue for that area. Occupancy, what I mean by occupancy, typically occupancy is either brokerage. By the way, this is after your brokerage, depending on your brokerage deal, but occupancy would be rent or brokerage fees or whatever. Technology, phone, office supplies, those are all like little stuff. But if you don't know what they are, if you haven't got a budget for it, then you'll find that these get way out of expense, way out of expense. And as a business, you'll see even in here, vehicle. Okay. So I used to live on, this is back to being that entrepreneur. Again, a concept of I lived on 30% of my income, one third, one third, one third. So one third of my income was for me to live. One third of my income was for me to save and invest. And one third of my income was to play. Okay. And I say play because if you don't reward yourself in life, you're not going to keep working that hard. So I traveled well, I had nice toys. And so sometimes the business is justified to supply a vehicle, but it doesn't need to be a Maserati because the business doesn't need a Maserati. So I would say the business has a budget of blank per vehicle, but when I wanted my first Mercedes, part of that came out of my play money. I was in charge of the business. Was on taxes. I'll be clear there because it's a business expense. I'm not talking tax. I'm talking about being an entrepreneur. You have to build a business that is profitable. So did the business need a Maserati? No, it didn't. Did it need 3 cars? No, it didn't. It needed 1. If I had 3 cars and they were tax deductible in my state or my wherever I am, that's all fine. But I'm talking about building a business. So this is a business model. And also we'll share with you after the call, I'm going to open to questions in a minute, a budget. I had a budget. And I knew what that budget was and budget. So we would sit down and say, okay, last year we did 100 transactions. What did we think? If something changed dramatically in the market, is inventory up? Is inventory down? What's the market doing? Can we do 120 transactions? Okay, if we do 100 transactions, this is the budget. And then every month, back to my comment, I would get financial statements by the 10th of the following month. And I would look at it and they would be budget versus actual. And that wasn't done by me. That was done by my bookkeeper or accountant. And those numbers told the story. Are we profitable or not? I want to come back to one thing though, because Amy, you asked this question. It is okay if you're starting off a business. I know people who I've encouraged to spend a higher percentage in lead generation when they're starting. That's a calculated risk. It's not a forever thing. It was a calculated risk to either buy market share or expand market share. I'm not going to say who, but you probably know, Amy will.
Oh, yeah.
But I have a client who I actually, part of their business model and their business plan is doing with the very wealthy. So part of our concept of how to get into those networks is its lifestyle. So in our business strategy session, we discussed buying a Rolls Royce so that they could join the Rolls Royce Club in their market. Within the first year of joining the Rolls Royce Club, they generated enough business out of that network that it paid for the car.
Yep.
Okay. So sometimes you have to invest in lead generation and take calculated, keyword, calculated risks. Not too many, but calculated risks. So I'm going to go back to my concept of, again, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 to live, 1/3 to play, 1/3 to invest. Sometimes I couldn't play with, I was generating too much income. So I would take that extra money and put it into invest. That allowed me to retire earlier. Those are choices. That's my thought. You guys may have higher overhead and say, hey, I want to do it 20%. That's okay. But you have to have a business plan to put some money away for a rainy day. You should have in a business at least 1 year, 6 months to 1 year liquidity, cash reserves. It doesn't have to be cash in a checking account, but it has to be liquidity. So you have either CDs, something that is liquid enough that you could cash it if you needed to fund the business because you made a calculated mistake. These are all entrepreneurial conversations, right? But everybody should have 6 months to 1 year. So again, you have a budget, you have a budget versus actual. And then you're going to have something else that Tammy will post at the end of this call is a net worth statement. I really encourage everybody to do a net worth statement. I used to do my net worth statement every 6 months, sometimes more. And again, I'm going to go back to the best thing I ever did, Alan Dom. I'm going to go give Alan the fourth shout out here. Alan sat with me and taught me how to read financial statements on one condition. Alan said to me, here's the deal. I'll spend this time with you. He actually allowed me to go shadow him in Philadelphia. That was an amazing experience. and watch him work. And he taught me how to read financial statements. He said, here's the deal. You must have your financial statements with you when you're at any business event. So at every conference during Star Power, he'd come up to me at some point through the conference and say, got your financials? If I didn't have them, it cost me $1,000 in those days. Okay.
I love that.
It was a gentleman's agreement. I always had them with me. They always, on my laptop, whatever, they were always with me. And what happened is I would start to read them and learn them and look at them. I could tell, today, and Amy has seen me do this, I can pick up a financial statement from any client and review it in probably 3 minutes, less. And I can find a couple of things that flag, and I'll ask questions, and they won't know the answers. That's not how you run a business.
No.
You need to know the answers. And that's what they taught me. By carrying those financial statements with me, because I was afraid of Alan, I would look at them more often. And the more I looked at them, the more I learned them, the more I understood them. That's why today I can be on this call talking about how to make a 7-figure profit. Because it's just
wonderful.
Numbers. That's all business is. It's just numbers.
So how do you help people get over I think a lot of people just carry a fear about looking at their financials.
Yeah.
So how do you help them get over that?
Here's the deal. Power. Knowledge is power. Do you want to be knowledgeable or not knowledgeable? Most people say they want to be knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be successful in business? Do you want to be able to be at choice? Do you want to be able to retire? You've got to find their pain. I'm going to be very vulnerable right now and share that. Part of mine was I came from a very poor family. I have a grade 9 education. I didn't know anybody. My father worked in a factory. My mother worked in a dry cleaner. I didn't know anybody who made 6 figures, never mind 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn. I had to learn how to do it, what to do with the money. I didn't know what to do when I'm making all this money. It's like, how do I invest it? I don't know. So you have to learn. Knowledge is power. And you went out and found people like Alan, like Greg Newman, like Howard, and they teach you. That's it. So where do you want to be? Are you happy? I'm lucky enough. We had an illness in the family this past year, and last 2 years, and I was lucky enough to be able to afford, 24-hour nursing, a nursing advocate, even when they were in the hospital. So, so you have somebody sitting in their room when I couldn't be there. Those are about being at choice. And I say that because that's about being at choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power that you have when you have good financial knowledge. I'll tell you, I still, during COVID and all these things, I still look at I redid my net worth statement again, because I'm now going, okay, we're 70, we got enough money. My financial planner keeps saying, Bill, you're fine till 93 if you won't touch the principal. It's like, oh God, we better increase the travel budget because I want to touch the principal. I want to get rid of it. I want to die with 0. That's the goal. I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And these are about being a choice. So find people's pain.
Mm-hmm.
Are they worried about their family? Are they worried about supporting? Are they worried about college funds? Do they want their kids to have an excellent education and have no student debt? Do they want to have, do they want to leave a legacy? All sorts of people. There's a star, I don't know if I'm allowed to call him out or not, but a star who I remember who took the graduate course with us many years ago and has eclipsed everybody I've ever met. And has now over 200 residential homes that he owns. He started off from nothing, built that. That's somebody who, and you know who that is, and that's and they learned the knowledge by asking and investing others. So knowledge is power. What other questions? Anybody else have questions, or I'm nattering away here?
It's wonderful. I'm taking so many notes. Sandra and Lisa, what questions do you have about profitability?
Well, I mean, I've always been terrible about tracking and business planning and all of it. You know, I just sort of go by the seat of my pants as a solopreneur.
Yeah. And Lisa,
Which is
that's fair.
ideal.
And that's fair. But the challenge with that is most of us at some point become comfortable. And we grow our most when we're uncomfortable. If you've ever done anything that's sport, or Amy, you climbed Kilimanjaro, right? That made you uncomfortable. There was moments in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that made you uncomfortable. Those are when we really grow as a person. And so what I'd say to you, Lisa, is you have to want it. I hope most people, unfortunately, this happens because something negative happens in life, either an illness and they have to find the finances or something. And so they have to start looking at numbers. And so we hope that never happens. So that's why it's about choice. Say, what do I want? Do I want to be and it's okay if I want to be a solopreneur. I like your term, solopreneur. That's good. I'm comfortable. But if I want to make $1 million, then it's a little risky. Right? I got into real estate at 40, and my goal was to get to zero. I was in debt. At 38, I owned my own home. I had no mortgage on it at 38, and I had an import business. And that's when Canada and the US had a free trade agreement. And all of a sudden, my business was not a business. And I had a 10-year lease on a warehouse that I didn't need any longer. Didn't make sense. I had to put that business into bankruptcy. I didn't go bankrupt, but I had to put that business into bankruptcy and start over again at 40. That was the aha moment. And I'll never forget the affirmations. I wrote my affirmations, read them every morning. I'm a happy, successful realtor. I have $100,000 in the bank. I winter warm. I have no debt. I have a body that works. I'm financially secure. All those things. So Lisa, back to your comment, if you're comfortable, you have to push yourself. Find out what will make you uncomfortable. If it's important, it may not be important, but to me, it was important not to be in that position. At 40, I was lucky enough that I could recover from it. If that happened at 60 or 70, I wouldn't recover. So, and according to stats, I'm not an expert here, so I'm saying this is what I've read. I don't know if it's factual, but only 30% of Americans and Canadians have enough financial net worth to retire comfortably without anything negative happening. And we've looked around the Star Power group, we've looked around our own lives. Something always happens. There's always going to be a shoe drop. I remember my financial planner saying to me at one point in my 50s when I became single, and he said, Bill, this is why you've been saving for a rainy day. It's friggin' pouring. You'll be okay.
Oh my gosh.
You'll be okay. And he was right. But come back to those goals. So that was my 30, one third to live, 1/3 to play, 1/3 to invest. And I'm not exaggerating. I would get my first commission checks, and my real estate office was get the checks at the office. The bank was a half a block away. I go deposit at the bank. On the way back from the bank, the mortgage company was in the office tower above my office. I would take the elevator to the 12th floor, and I'd write a check for the 30%. And the mortgage company would go like, Bill, you don't need to come in every week. We could do this once a month or once a year. Oh no. I need to come in every time I get a paycheck. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will spend it. I will find something shiny. I will find a reason. I will be distracted. And I was able to pay off my mortgage within 2.5 years.
Incredible.
That is incredible.
Just by having clarity. Sandra, you had a question.
Yeah. I'm probably a fairly peculiar person as as people go. Money has never meant all that much to me. And it causes me not to be as financially astute as I should be. The only time money ever matters to me is when the chips are down and money gets real tight. And then I get all, but other than that, I've never had a goal of making $1 million or any, and I struggle, you would think at my age, and I have you beat by a whole bunch, that I would by now be real clear on my why. And I still am not.
Oh, I am. I know your why.
Do you?
Oh, yeah. It's people. You love helping people. You're everybody else. You put everybody else first. You're in the front row seat. You look after everybody else. You one of the. I'm not sucking up. You're one of the nicest people ever. Always. You're polite. It's relationships. It's relationships. So again, I'm going to go back to that. So for me, part of that was, again, I talked about my mother. You know, she worked in a dry cleaner. My father died when I was 15. He was 51, 51, something like that. You know, I was able to financially support my mother for many, many years.
Wow.
That was important. That was important. And so that's your why. It may be helping somebody else. I still, you know, 10% of my income goes to charity. Now, when I say charity, that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, United Way or something. Maybe at different times, it will be a charity that, you know, I'm trying to be careful here, but, you know, when I knew some Canadians who were helping people leave Ukraine early on, when the war started, and they were relocating them into their cities. Perfect. I could write checks for airfare. That was fine. I could, you know, do that. Kilimanjaro kids. That speaks to me. So I like to where it's more personal. So it doesn't have to be a big, but I always know when I speak or wherever, 10% always goes to if the company has their own charity. I'm going to be speaking in Canada for Royal LePage. They have something called the Shelter Foundation. 10% of my speaking fee always goes to that. So for you, Sandra, it may be finding something that you care about. And I know you care about animals, and I know you care about people, and saying, hey, I want to be able to leave a legacy or financial. I'll be honest with you, if you had told me I'd be making $1 million, I tell you were nuts. Okay. But I made $1 million net. Okay. But I didn't believe I could do that. So it didn't start off to be $1 million. It was just to be the best I could be. Okay. So you know your big why. Is to help somebody else. Amy, any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. Lisa or Sandra?
Thank you
No.
thank you for listening to me this long, Lisa and Sandra.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Your 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Is that after you take your taxes off the top?
Always.
Mhm.
Okay. Because that's not my money. And
Right.
I'll be politically incorrect here. And I always say, I'm one of these people today. There are moments where I grumbled, I'll be honest. But one of these people today where I'm happy to pay taxes. I've been lucky enough to travel the world. There's not many places I haven't been able to go. And I know that I'm lucky in the lifestyle that we have and the medical attention we have and the food we have. That's not, so I don't care. I'm happy to pay taxes. And I'm happy to pay my taxes. They're always paid first. Again, Amy knows this for years. No debt. Credit cards are paid every month. That's just all wasted money. Right? I'm not cheap. I live well. I have champagne tastes. I have champagne taste. Gucci shoes. Let's
Don't
be
we
clear.
all?
Let's be clear. But that comes at a cost. And so I will work for it. So yes, that's 1/3. And it's hard sometimes. When I first start over again, ooh, I mean, I was doing okay at 38, house no mortgage, but I had to move from a 4,000 square foot house with it, and I had to write a check to the realtor to pay the commission. There was no equity left. That's when I got in real estate, and trying to live on a third, I moved to an 1,100 square foot third floor apartment. Not for long. I did okay. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I had family. And if I got a free meal, I was happy for the free meal. And now I can pay for anybody's free meal. Those are choices.
Bill,
It's
I
tough.
want to thank you for sharing so authentically and just being so transparent. I hope that everyone who listens to this, and I can see on Sandra and Lisa's face, they've gotten the value, but I hope everyone that listens to this later, it appreciates how honest and open book you've been today. It really is encouraging from my perspective that no matter where somebody's at, that there are very tangible ways to move forward, to do better, and that there's no shame in figuring out what that financial picture is going to look like.
It's funny. I don't know who said it, but somebody said it. I'm sure somebody said it. Is I've been rich, I've been poor. Both are fine. Rich is a lot more fun. And so it's about being a choice and knowing that there's help there. I've named several names. All of these people, most started in Star Power, but most of these people helped me along the way. 15-year-old kid on the street, basically, from a working class family. Nobody trained me to do this. If I can pull that off with no education, shit, anybody can do it. Right? Anybody can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And it was an honor to be able to share this time with you guys, and hopefully you took something away from it.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so, so much. And Sandra and Lisa, thanks for being here today. Appreciate you both.
Keep well.